When you disappear and go silent, the very first thing that happens is shock. She may have thought you would always be there, waiting, available whenever she wanted your attention. She may have believed she could push your limits, test your patience, or even take you for granted, and you would still stay right where she left you. But when you finally step back and remove yourself, that silence hits her harder than anything you could ever say. At first, she might not even register it as a big deal. She tells herself, you'll reach out, you'll break, you'll chase like before. But day by day, as the silence lingers, reality sets in. She starts to feel the weight of your absence, the void you once filled, and the subtle but powerful energy shift that now leaves her unsettled. The human mind is wired to notice contrast. When something that was always present suddenly disappears, it creates an immediate imbalance. Think about it. If you walk into a room that always has a certain fragrance, you may not consciously notice it anymore. But the moment that scent disappears, the absence is loud. And it's exactly what happens with silence after your disappearance. She had become accustomed to your energy, your words, your attention. Even if she pretended not to care, even if she claimed she didn't need it, the truth is that she relied on the consistency of your presence. And when that presence is suddenly gone, her mind doesn't just shrug it off, it reacts. It feels the emptiness. It feels the missing piece. It notices. At first, her pride will try to shield her. She might brush it off, telling herself she doesn't care, that you're probably just busy, or that you'll eventually cave. But silence has a way of cutting through denial because it can't be argued with. Words can be debated, twisted, or ignored, but silence leaves nothing to latch onto. And in that nothingness, her own thoughts grow louder. The same silence she once interpreted as weakness now begins to feel like strength because it forces her to face the truth. You're not there anymore, and she can't control it. That shock unsettles her because it challenges the story she told herself about you, that you are always going to be within reach. Every day that passes without you breaking that silence intensifies the effect. On day one, it's confusion. On day two, it's irritation. On day three, it's questioning. And by the end of the week, the absence that once seemed insignificant is now undeniable. The more you stay quiet, the more her mind replays the moments she shared with you. Suddenly, the little things you did, the attention you gave, the support you offered, all of it starts resurfacing in her memory. She compares how it felt when you were there with how it feels now that you're gone, and that contrast starts to gnaw at her. The power of disappearing is that it flips the dynamic. Instead of you being the one constantly thinking about her, wondering what she's doing, waiting for her responses, now it's her mind doing the chasing. Silence rewires the focus, and because the human brain hates unanswered questions, your absence becomes a puzzle she feels compelled to solve. Did you lose interest? Did you move on? Did you find someone better? Did she push you too far? That silence forces her to reflect on her behavior in a way words never could. What makes this so powerful is that silence creates emotional space where words can't reach. If you had argued, begged, or explained yourself, she could dismiss it, fight back, or tune it out. But when you withdraw completely, there's nothing for her to fight. There's just the reality of a life without your presence. And over time, that reality sinks in. It stirs feelings of regret. It awakens curiosity. It makes her start to question whether she underestimated you, whether she undervalued the connection, and whether she lost something she didn't realize she needed until it was gone. The shock of absence is not about punishing her, it's about reclaiming your power. By disappearing and allowing silence to do the work, you're sending a clear message without saying a word. You are not desperate, you are not chasing, and you refuse to be taken for granted. That message resonates louder than any speech because it's backed by action, by discipline, and by self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. It pulls her thoughts back to you, not because you demanded it, but because you withdrew your energy and created a space that she now feels deeply. Day by day, silence transforms from something she thought she wanted into something she can't escape. It unsettles her, challenges her, and forces her to see your value in a way she may have overlooked before. Because the truth is, people often don't realize the importance of someone until that person is no longer available. Silence is the mirror that reflects what words cannot it shows her in the stark absence of your presence exactly what she had and exactly what she lost. And that's why the shock of absence will always hit harder than anything you could ever say. When you disappear and remain silent, curiosity begins to eat at her mind, and doubt slowly starts to grow in ways she cannot control. At first, she may brush it off, telling herself that you're just busy or that your silence is temporary, but as the days stretch into weeks, her thoughts no longer remain calm. Human beings naturally seek patterns and answers, and when the usual pattern of your presence is suddenly gone, her brain begins working overtime to fill in the blanks. She starts questioning things she never questioned before, replaying conversations, reliving moments, and wondering if she miscalculated her choices. Silence without explanation becomes a powerful trigger for curiosity, and curiosity rarely leaves people in peace. Her mind will begin to wander back to the times when you were consistently there. She'll recall how you used to check in, how you used to care, how you always made time for her. And now, faced with a void, she begins to compare what was then to what is now. Each unanswered question fuels the next. Why hasn't he reached out? Turns into, did he lose interest? And eventually, did I push him away? It is in this silence that she begins to doubt her own behavior, her decisions, and even her worth in your eyes. The very confidence she displayed when she thought she could take you for granted now begins to falter, because silence gives her nothing to lean on. No reassurance, no validation. This curiosity is more powerful than any conversation because it comes from within her. You're not telling her what to think. You're not persuading her to reconsider. You're not begging for her attention. Instead, her own mind becomes the voice replaying your value to her. She starts to second guess the way she treated you, wondering if she underestimated your strength, if she misjudged your importance, or if she made the mistake of assuming you would always be there no matter what. Doubt begins to unravel the certainty she once had, and in that unraveling, you gain power. What's fascinating about silence is that it forces projection. Without your words to guide her, she starts creating her own narrative, and that narrative often reflects her fears. She may imagine you moving on, meeting someone else, or enjoying your life without her. Each scenario she plays in her head plants seeds of insecurity. She might not admit it, but the idea that you're fine without her unsettles her deeply, because when someone disappears with confidence, it communicates self-worth, and that makes the other person wonder if they ever truly had control in the first place. This curiosity is relentless. It doesn't stop at one thought or one day. It compounds. Each unanswered moment adds another layer to her questioning. And unlike arguments or long conversations that eventually fade from memory, silence lingers. It follows her into quiet moments when she least expects it. It shows up at night when she's scrolling through her phone, checking to see if your name appears. It sneaks in when she's around other people, noticing the lack of your presence compared to before. It builds pressure inside her because curiosity is a hunger the mind tries to satisfy. But when silence offers no answers, that hunger only grows. And as curiosity deepens, doubt follows closely behind. Doubt is what turns her confident decisions into fragile uncertainties. She may have once felt sure about pulling away, sure about ignoring your effort, or sure about replacing you, but now, in silence, that confidence cracks. She wonders if she made a mistake, if she misread your worth, if she miscalculated your strength. Doubt doesn't come all at once. It arrives quietly, piece by piece, but with each passing day of silence, those pieces add up until they become undeniable. This process rewires her perception of you. In the past, she may have seen you as predictable, always available, always giving more than you should. But your silence flips that perception. Now she sees you as mysterious, disciplined, and untouchable. The certainty she once had that she could reach out and you'd always respond vanishes. She no longer feels secure in her control over you. And insecurity is what makes people reevaluate their choices. You see, when you speak too much, you often dilute your power because your words give clarity, and clarity gives comfort. But when you choose silence, you deny comfort. You let her live in the unknown, and the unknown is what creates obsession. She can't stop thinking because she has no closure, no explanation, no way of tying up the loose ends. And in that gap, her curiosity becomes her weakness, while your silence becomes your strength. Day by day, this curiosity shifts into reflection. She wonders what life would look like if you came back into it, and she begins to miss the things she once dismissed. Doubt makes her question whether she truly wanted distance or if she only wanted attention without responsibility. The longer your silence lasts, the more she wrestles with those questions, and the more powerful your absence becomes. In the end, silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of power. It triggers curiosity she can't silence herself. It plants doubt she can't erase with pride. It forces her to think of you not because you demanded it, but because her own mind won't let her forget. And that is why silence, when used with confidence, becomes the strongest message you could ever send. When you disappear and remain silent, you create space that forces her to reflect in ways she never had to before. When you were present, available, and always giving your attention, she didn't have to think too much about what you meant to her because you were right there. But once you step away, once the conversations stop, once the calls and messages no longer come through, she's left sitting with her own emotions, and that space becomes the mirror she can't escape. In that mirror, she starts to realize what life really feels like without you, and it's often far different from the picture she thought she wanted. Silence doesn't just withhold words, it creates contrast. She remembers how you made her feel, how your presence filled certain gaps in her life, and how your energy was part of her routine. Now that the silence surrounds her, those memories echo louder. She may try to distract herself, fill the void with other people, or bury her thoughts in work, but silence is patient. It lingers in the moments when distractions fade, late at night, early in the morning, or when she's alone with her thoughts. That's when reflection hits hardest, and that's when she begins to notice what she lost. The truth is, people don't often value consistency until it's gone. When you were showing up, she might have assumed it would last forever, that you'd always be there, no matter how she treated you. But silence proves otherwise. By stepping back, you demonstrate strength, an ability to walk away when you're not valued. And that strength forces her to think about the role she played in pushing you away. She begins to replay moments where she dismissed your effort, ignored your calls, or took your kindness for granted. Reflection forces her to confront the uncomfortable truth. Maybe she underestimated your worth. Over time, that reflection shifts into a deeper realization. She doesn't just miss your presence, she starts to understand why it mattered. She remembers the way you supported her, the way you made her feel safe, the way you stood by her even when she wasn't at her best. Now, without it, she sees the difference between what she thought she wanted and what she actually needed. And silence sharpens that awareness because it gives no reassurance, no soft landing, no easy way out. It leaves her alone with the truth, and the truth is often that she had something valuable but failed to see it clearly in the moment. This process can be uncomfortable for her because it forces growth. Reflection isn't always pleasant, it's humbling. It makes her question her choices, her behavior, and even her judgment. But it's in that discomfort that she begins to truly recognize your value. The longer your silence lasts, the more she's reminded of the difference between having you in her life and living without you. And that recognition doesn't come from you telling her, it comes from her own mind and heart. That's why it's powerful. By creating space through silence, you shift the focus inward. You're no longer the one explaining, convincing, or proving yourself. She becomes the one doing the work, reflecting on what she lost and realizing that the man she thought she could overlook is the man she now misses. And that is how silence rewires her perspective. It forces her to feel the weight of your absence and reflect deeply on the reality of your value. When you choose silence after disappearing, what often surprises her most is that your silence doesn't come across as weakness, it radiates strength. Most people expect you to beg, plead, or explain yourself when you walk away. They assume you'll reach out to justify your absence or fight for attention. But when you remain silent, when you refuse to break that wall of quiet, no matter how much time passes, you send a very different message. That silence says without words that you don't need her validation, you don't need her approval, and you don't need to chase what doesn't value you. It tells her that your life moves forward regardless, and that realization shifts the entire dynamic in your favor. Every day that goes by without you speaking, your silence grows louder. At first, she might interpret it as indifference or even stubbornness, but as the days turn into weeks, it begins to look like discipline. It begins to look like self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. Instead of seeing you as someone weak for disappearing, she sees the opposite. A man who has the strength to hold his ground, a man who can control his emotions instead of being controlled by them, a man who doesn't need to prove his worth through words, but demonstrates it through action, or in this case, through silence. This silence also shifts the power balance. When you were constantly talking, explaining, or chasing, the power leaned toward her. She was the one deciding how much of you she would accept, the one setting the pace, the one with the control. But silence changes that. Now she's the one questioning, she's the one wondering, and she's the one left without answers. That reversal unsettles her because it breaks the pattern she grew used to. And in that break, she begins to recognize the strength you carry within yourself. Over time, your silence becomes undeniable proof that you value yourself enough to walk away from anything less than respect and appreciation. And that's a kind of power that doesn't need explanation. It's felt. She begins to sense it in the absence of your attention, in the lack of your effort, in the space you've created by removing yourself. Instead of weakness, your silence shows unshakable confidence because only someone who truly values themselves can remain silent in the face of uncertainty. What makes this even more powerful is that silence communicates boundaries without you having to speak them. It tells her that you will not tolerate being taken for granted, that you won't chase someone who doesn't see your worth, and that you're willing to let go rather than lose yourself. Those boundaries are unspoken but crystal clear, and they shift how she sees you. Where she may have once believed she had the upper hand, now she sees that the real strength was yours all along. Day by day, your silence rewires her mind. Instead of viewing you as someone she could dismiss, she now views you as someone with discipline, composure, and control. She sees that your silence is not emptiness, it is presence, it is power, and it is self-respect. And that realization changes everything. That is why your silence, far from weakness, becomes the loudest declaration of strength.